What is your full name? पूरा जोर पूरा बोल.
Devshi Kulshareshta, an Indian Jet Airways stewardess, was arrested while trying to smuggle $500,000 in her luggage on January the 8th of 2018. The 25-year-old had boarded a flight from New Delhi to Hong Kong with the currency in tow. Upon landing, officials from the Directorate of Revenue Intelligence searched her bags after receiving an anonymous tip about her. In Kulshareshta's luggage underneath shoes and cosmetics, they found a large quantity of $100 bills. The contraband had been wrapped in foil in an attempt to keep X-ray scanners from detecting it. Kulshareshta told investigators that she'd been working with Amit Malhotra, aged 40, the leader of a smuggling network based in New Delhi. The flight attendant had participated in multiple smuggling operations during the 5 months prior to her arrest. She was paid $1,400 for each trip, having managed to smuggle over $1.4 million in total. Number 8. Julianne March. Flight attendant Julianne March of Wisconsin was charged with criminal intoxication after boarding a United Express flight from Chicago to Indiana while drunk on August the 8th of 2019. Passengers recorded the 49-year-old woman slumped over in her seat, apparently passed out. The video was uploaded online, at which point the authorities caught wind of the situation. According to eyewitnesses, March had begun acting erratically during the boarding process, making security announcements in a slurred speech and bumping into passengers as she walked up and down the aisle. Once she took her seat, March didn't wake up for the remainder of the flight. Upon landing, March was approached by police officers. She seemed disoriented, and when asked if she knew what city she was in, she responded, Chicago, where the plane had departed, not South Bend, Indiana, where it has since landed. When administered a breathalyzer test, her blood alcohol level was determined to be 0.204, 5 times over the legal limit for flight attendants in the state. Air Wisconsin, March's employer, fired her when news of the incident surfaced. She was released from custody on her own recognizance and was later ordered to undergo alcohol counseling and evaluation. March's criminal charges would be dropped if she followed the court's requirements for a year. Number 7. Sam Thompson. 26-year-old flight attendant Sam Thompson was arrested after footage of him drinking during a flight surfaced on May the 18th of 2022. The incident occurred during a flight from Rzeszów in Poland to Stansted Airport in the UK. One of the passengers recorded Thompson, who was working as a member of the cabin crew, drinking a 187-milliliter bottle of wine, as well as a shot of Jack Daniels from the trolley. The passenger, whose identity wasn't disclosed, stated that Thompson looked as though he'd been drinking before the flight had even begun as well. Thompson's employer, Ryanair, reportedly requires its employees to abstain from consuming alcohol at least 8 hours prior to any flight, as well as during the entire duration of their shift. The captain on board the flight in question performed a breathalyzer test on the flight attendant. After being informed of his drinking, Thompson's blood alcohol level was 0.05, above the legal driving limit. He was promptly fired and arrested upon landing, charged with performing an aviation function while impaired. Number 6. Carla Alvarado. On September the 28th of 2013, JetBlue flight attendant Carla Alvarado agreed to go undercover for the authorities after being caught smuggling illicit substances disguised as candy on a flight from Colombia to Florida. The 33-year-old, who was wearing a bodysuit beneath her flight attendant uniform, immediately confessed to her wrongdoings after being selected for inspection by customs officers. She explained that she'd been paid $10,000 to smuggle the illegal products into the U.S. by 43-year-old Jorge Luis Alomar, whom she was supposed to meet in Orlando. Alvarado subsequently agreed to work with investigators on a sting operation. She met with Alomar the following day, delivering a bag which he believed contained the illicit substances she'd smuggled. The man was arrested upon accepting the delivery, and a search of his Davenport home revealed the presence of 2 additional bags of contraband, one hidden underneath a dresser and the other inside a bathroom's ceiling vent. Alvarado pleaded guilty on January the 3rd of 2014 and was granted a lesser jail sentence of 2 years due to her cooperation with authorities. Alomar received a harsher sentence of 15 years in federal prison. Both were ordered to pay $10,000, considered by the court to be the proceeds of the smuggling operation. Number 5. Nancy Bray. On January the 14th of 2014, 58-year-old flight attendant Nancy Bray boarded a plane for work at the Bluegrass Airport in Lexington, Kentucky, with 3 times the legal blood alcohol limit. Bray already had a criminal record at the time of her subsequent arrest, having faced a DUI charge 4 years earlier in Florida. Officers tested her blood alcohol level on the plane, registering it to be 0.258, 3 times the legal limit in Kentucky. They also discovered prescription pills outside of their original container. Her arrest delayed the flight's takeoff for 2 hours. She was charged with being an aircrew member under the influence and possession of a controlled substance, to which she pleaded not guilty. As of the most recent available updates, it's unclear how the case ultimately played out. Number 4. Marcia Gay Reynolds. On March the 23rd of 2016, former beauty queen and air hostess Marcia Gay Reynolds was arrested in New York after escaping from a security screening at the Los Angeles International Airport. The 33-year-old Miss Jamaica runner-up had arrived at an LAX checkpoint wearing a crew member badge, expecting to bypass security, but was selected for a random screening. Reynolds grew agitated when airport officials informed her that she'd be subjected to a secondary check and began speaking in a foreign language before abandoning her bags and kicking off her shoes. She then sprinted out of the terminal and down an escalator, outrunning patrol officers. When her discarded bags were inspected, airport security discovered roughly $2 million worth of illicit substances. The woman managed to get on another flight to New York without being detected, but ultimately surrendered to the authorities several days later. Although the minimum possible sentence for her charged conspiracy to possess and distribute was reported as 10 years in prison, the court took the JetBlue flight attendant's cooperation into account when doling out her punishment. After spending 3 years behind bars during the case's legal proceedings, Reynolds was sentenced in April of 2018 to time served in exchange for pleading guilty and providing information about her co-conspirators. Number 3. Carlos Alberto Muniz Moyano, Maria Isabel Wilson Osandon, Maria Beatriz Paston Kuzma, and Miaria del Pilar Roman Strick. On May the 21st of 2019, 4 American airline flight attendants were arrested on money laundering charges after landing in Miami, Florida on board a flight that departed from Chile. In the resulting police reports, the suspects were identified as Carlos Alberto Muniz Moyano, aged 40, Maria Isabel Wilson Osandon, aged 48, and 55-year-old Maria Beatriz Paston Kuzma, and Maria del Pilar Romain Strick. The first to be searched by the authorities was Muniz Moyano, who caught the attention of Customs and Border Patrol agents by claiming to only be carrying $100. Inside his bag, officials discovered $9,000. Airport agents decided to search the rest of the aircrew's luggage, uncovering $6,371 in Wilson Osandon's bag and $7,300 in Roman Strick's. Although no money was found in Paston Kuzma's possession, she admitted to having participated in the smuggling plot along with her co-workers. $22,671 were discovered in total. The 4 suspects told authorities that they were supposed to get a 1% cut of that sum. Today's topic was requested by I Punch Politicians, Sea Flight Attendant, and Tanisha Hinton. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comment section below. Number 2. Melissa Nezty. Australian flight attendant Melissa Nezty was released from jail after serving only a week of her 18-month sentence. having been convicted of engaging in intimate relations with a minor in 2010. Nezty was 23 years old and working as an attendance officer at a Sydney high school at the time of the illegal relationship. It wouldn't be until October of 2020 that she ultimately pleaded guilty to her criminal charges and was sentenced for the abuse. However, only a few days into her incarceration, Nezty's lawyer issued a bail appeal, arguing that his client was unlikely to reoffend and had been able to gain employment outside of the education system. Judge Susan Horan agreed with the defense's request, but set a number of conditions for Nezty's release. The 33-year-old flight attendant was forbidden from making contact with her victim and could not be in the company of anyone under the age of 16 alone. Although she was allowed to own a cell phone, she was required to give the police complete, unfettered access to the device. Number 1. Corey Lee. Corey Lee, an award-winning travel blogger who suffered from spinal muscular atrophy, was mistreated and threatened by Delta's aircrew during a flight from Santiago de Chile to Atlanta, Georgia, on November the 13th of 2022. Because of his medical condition, Lee used a specialized wheelchair which weighed over 400 pounds and thus wasn't allowed on flights. Used to being the last one to deboard since his wheelchair was hard to maneuver, Lee waited until everyone else had left the cabin before asking flight attendants if his power chair had already arrived at the bridge. He was told that it wasn't, but that he'd have to deboard anyway and wait in one of the aisle chairs. Lee asked to instead remain on the plane according to his rights under the Air Carrier Access Act, indicating that the chairs would cause him to develop pressure sores. Airplane personnel subsequently became hostile toward the man, and one of the stewards then informed a supervisor that Lee didn't want to leave the plane. The argument escalated until one of the flight attendants warned Lee that the TSA would force him to get off the aircraft with all their guns and stuff. Fortunately, as tensions continued to escalate, another employee entered the cabin to inform Lee that his wheelchair had arrived. The whole interaction was recorded and uploaded on social media in the aftermath. Delta apologized for the flight attendant's behavior, stating that the exchange in this video does not reflect the high standard of care expected from employees and that they've gotten in contact with Lee to personally apologize. Thanks for watching. Would you rather be a school bus driver for kids with behavioral issues or a flight attendant on an airline that serves free alcohol to its passengers? Let us know in the comments section below.